I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're taking a look at the all-new for 2013 Honda Accord sedan. It's been completely redesigned for the 2013 model year, featuring an entirely new exterior, entirely new interior, and a mostly new drivetrain under the hood. So let's take a look around the car. Let's hop inside, let's hop under the engine compartment, of course hop in the trunk and take a look. The Accord's had a thorough nose job for 2013. We have a bit more chrome than before, and we have these standard projector headlamps. Now our particular model is an EX model, which starts around $24,600, which means we get these standard fog lights as well. Now in terms of the competition, the Honda Accord is still very sedate in styling. I mean, it's not very exciting. It's, I hate to say it, but it is a little bit boring perhaps, even compared to some of its competition. But I think that this might age a little bit better than the dramatic nose on the new Camry or the Hyundai Sonata. I think that it's elegant and it's attractive, but it's definitely not as exciting as the new Ford Fusion. And that new Ford Fusion, of course, has that Aston Martin-esque grille that excites all the automotive press. If you get the V6 model, you of course get twin exhausts, although our particular model, being an EX model, is the 4-cylinder Accord, and so we only have that single chrome exhaust over there. Also, certain models of the Accord have LED tail lamps. Our particular model doesn't, of course, because it's an EX model. Honda has stuck to a very traditional engine lineup for the 2013 Accord. Things start out here with this base 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine. This engine has direct injection as well as variable valve timing to give it 185 horsepower. It also produces 181 pound-feet of torque, which is fairly robust for an engine of this size, as well as for a naturally aspirated engine. If you want to jump up to the V6 engine, that's a 3.5-liter V6, and it produces 272 horsepower. Transmission options are also fairly traditional, with this engine being mated to either your choice of a 6-speed manual transmission or a CVT. And that's a brand new CVT for Honda, but CVTs aren't really that unusual in the mid-size sedan segment, with Nissan doing it for several years. If you opt for that V6 in the sedan, you can only get that with a 6-speed automatic transmission, because the 6-speed manual is reserved exclusively for the Accord Coupe. Let's take a quick look at the interior of the 2013 Accord. As you can see, it's been completely redesigned for 2013. It's a completely different design than before, although the general theme is fairly familiar to you if you've had a Honda product in the past. The dashboard is dominated by this central binnacle here, which houses a standard 8-inch LCD screen. Now that's, again, standard in all models of the Accord, including the base LX model. The base LX model and the EX also have the audio controls up here and a storage compartment down here. As you can see, you can put a phone in there if you'd like. This storage compartment is right above the USB port and the power outlet down here, so you can plug your device in here, run the cord through this little knockout, and then stuff it in this compartment. However, there's no USB port in that compartment, so you do have to have those cords showing all the time. Here's our shifter. This is, again, a CVT-equipped vehicle. This is the key fob for our 2013 Honda Accord. It's also been redesigned, and since we have an EX model, we do have push-button start here as well as keyless entry. Front seat comfort in the Accord is very good. Now, we're of course in that EX model, which means we get this power 10-way adjustable driver's seat. If you want to power a passenger seat in the Accord, you have to step up a number of trim levels in the Accord in order to get that. All models do get this adjustable tilt telescope steering column, although the range of motion is not quite as large as it is in some of the competition, most notably the Camry or the Ford Fusion, which have a tilt telescoping steering column that really pops quite a long way out. If you opt for the sport model of a Honda Accord, then you do get some shift paddles on the back of the steering wheel, although I'm really not quite clear why you would want shift paddles in a CVT transmission. I think they're about as useful as shift paddles on a French Poodle. Our viewers have been asking us what the instrument clusters in vehicles look like, so here's the 2013 Honda Accord's instrument cluster. Over here on the left you get the tachometer, on the middle we get the speedometer, and in the very center of the speedometer we get the trip computer, which shows you instant fuel economy, your trip information, distance, fuel economy, etc. As you can see, we've been averaging a very respectable 32.5 miles per gallon over 617 miles, and then on the very far left we get our usual temperature gauge and fuel gauge. Now, if we zoom in on the side of the speedometer, you'll notice this white line that starts at the top and ends at the bottom there, right here. Now, that particular line turns green if you're driving economically and turns white if you're not driving economically, or if you're parked like we are right now. Getting in and out of the back seats in the Accord is considerably easier than it is in something like a Ford Fusion because of the profile of the Accord. It has a very traditional sedan shape with a very upright and tall greenhouse in the rear. That also means if you take a look over to the side window over here, you can see that visibility for shorter rear passengers or kids is very good in this Accord, which is not something you can say about the Ford Fusion. The seat back angles are of course Also designed for normal human beings in this vehicle, again made possible by that upright profile in the Accord, so you don't have a strange seating position like you do in some of these mid-size sedans that are trying to look a little bit too sexy. If you scoot over to the middle seat, you can also see that you have a decent amount of room here. I'm 6 feet tall. This driver's seat's adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. I have several inches of legroom left back here, and I have a decent amount of headroom even in this sunroof-equipped model. Moving all the way over to this far seat, this front passenger seat is adjusted for a 6'5" passenger that we had in the vehicle. So you can see I still have about 2 inches of legroom left there as well. We also get a center armrest with dual cup holders as standard in the Accord. Our Accord sedan also has a folding rear seat back, but the seat back folds as one single unit, as you can see. So it's a 100% folding seat back rather than a 60-40 split folding arrangement like some of the competitors have, which means that you can only fit 2 people in the car if you need to carry some longer cargo in your trunk. This trunk opening is also a little bit smaller than some of the competition, definitely something to keep in mind if you've become accustomed to a fairly large trunk pass-through. The Accord scores 7 out of 10 points in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index because although this trunk is larger than the last generation Accord, it is still smaller than some of the competition. We also get hinges that impact your cargo carrying capacity because you can see they're not hidden hinges, so when you close these hinges in on your trunk, you end up hitting boxes or your head or your legs or whatever might be in the trunk. We do get a nice handle to help close the trunk, however. That is something that I really appreciate because a lot of vehicles these days are leaving handles like this out, which leaves you to paw on the outside of your trunk lid, either scratching the trunk lid with your fingers or getting your hands dirty because your trunk lid's dirty. Infotainment options on the Accord start out with the base LX model and a 160-watt 4-speaker system. The EX model, like our tester here, gets a 160-watt 6-speaker sound system, and the EXL and everything above that get a 360-watt 7-speaker sound system. As I said, this 8-inch screen is standard on all models, as is this control panel in the lower models. The upper models, instead of having this control panel here, they move down here, and in this place we get a touchscreen audio interface. That's the same interface that's used in the EXL as well as the Touring and the EXL V6 models with the hard drive navigation system. Because we're in an EX model and our control panel is up here, down here and we get a little cubby instead of another control panel. As you can see, this is where you can fit your smartphone or your USB music device. My only complaint about this is that although the music device can be hidden away in a cubby like this, the USB port is always in plain view, as you can see right behind the shifter. It's also where your power outlet is as well. I really would prefer if this USB cable was in the center console compartment or in the glove box like most other car companies, but as it is, it has one and it works very well with your iPod or your USB device. Now, because we're in an EX model, we don't have the optional satellite radio, so instead we just have direct access buttons to AM, FM, CD. Auxiliary is where you'll find your Pandora integration, your Bluetooth audio streaming, your USB and your iPod interfaces, and of course we have our Bluetooth phone interface over here. Let's take a look at those audio screens now. This is the Pandora interface, and this streams audio right off the Pandora app on your smartphone. I do have an iPhone at the moment, and as of the original publication of the Accord, there was no Android smartphone app for this, but we hear that there is one coming soon, so there may be one by the time you watch this video. Now, there's no Honda-specific app required for this. All you have to do is download the Pandora app, and this car interfaces directly with that Pandora app rather than needing a third-party app like Toyota's Entune or BMW's iDrive, etc. Now on this screen, we do have access via the menu button here to like and dislike certain songs. We can actually see our station list inside Pandora. I really don't use Pandora, so I don't have a whole lot of stations here, but we can switch over to Toby Keith Radio, for instance. We have the ability via the buttons, these are the memory buttons on the radio, to play and pause songs, to like and dislike certain songs, bookmark the artists, etc. The system works very well, but keep in mind that it does use the data services on your smartphone, so if you have a limited data service plan, this may be a little bit less useful than your XM satellite radio option would be. Now on my commute, I go in and out of cell phone coverage just a little bit, and that was a bit annoying with Pandora. That's also something else to keep in mind if you're debating jumping up to that next model that has XM satellite radio for those long car trips. If we move over to the Bluetooth interface, you can see you have your fairly stereotypical Bluetooth interface. You can fast forward, you can rewind, you can change tracks via this interface. You can play and you can pause, but you can't browse your library. That's done, using the direct access interface on your iDevice or your USB device, etc. Next option is the USB interface, which we don't have anything plugged into. Over on the iPod interface, you can see it looks fairly similar to that Bluetooth interface. We get album art over here, fairly high resolution screen, but it's very simply laid out. It's not cluttered at all. We click the menu button here. We can search for music on our iDevice or your USB device, it's fairly the same. We have complete access to our artists, songs, albums, playlists, etc. on our device. As you can see, the system is fairly snappy. It preloads all this information from your device and then it caches it internally so that these searches are faster. You also have the ability in this system to do an alphabet search for a particular song. As you can see here, we can start with J and you can see what we have under J on our iDevice. Now, the only downside to this system is there are no voice commands a la Microsoft Sync by Ford. And that's becoming fairly common in this industry. Pretty much just Honda and Volkswagen are left out of the voice command party because Toyota does it now. Nissan has a fairly limited system in the new Altima and Sentra, and of course Ford's been doing it for quite some time. Even General Motors is getting in the party with their new Buick Link and Chevy MyLink systems, and the new General Motors systems are probably among the best in this particular segment in terms of voice recognition ability. Going over to the phone interface, you can see we have our fairly typical Bluetooth phone interface. We do have the ability to do text messages if your particular phone supports that, of course. We're out here in suburban Los Gatos, California testing the Accord because Los Gatos has some really badly paved roads. Seriously, Chicago and other Rust Belt cities have nothing on the poorly paved concrete roads here in Los Gatos, California. And that's a great place to test a car like the Accord because the Accord is supposed to be everything for everyone. It's supposed to be that commuter car, it's supposed to be the take your kids to school car, take yourself to work car, go on weekend vacations away with the family. It's still supposed to be that car that is going to be a little bit fun on winding mountain roads when you're all by yourself and the car seats aren't in the back. And it's also supposed to be able to handle potholes and everything that daily life throws at a vehicle. And the Accord finally does very well at this, and that's partially because Honda has ditched the double wishbone suspension that you found in previous generations of the Accord for a more conventional McPherson strut front end. Now, they've also tuned that suspension for a bit more of a dynamic ride than you would normally anticipate in this segment. So this car is not as soft as the Camry, and it's not as soft as the Nissan Altima either. It actually even is a little bit stiffer than the Ford Fusion, which was previously the sort of sporting choice in this segment along with the Mazda 6. And now I think that award really goes to this Accord because this the springs are a little bit firmer, the ride is very well damped, and it actually handles very well. And that handling is thanks to a fairly low curb weight. This 4-cylinder model weighs about 3,200 pounds, which is significantly lighter than the V6 and 6-speed automatic version of this Accord sedan, which makes it handle much better than the Accord sedan. It's much lighter up front because, again, all that weight's up front because all they're doing really is changing the engine when you go to the V6 version. And that really pays dividends in the handling department. That's also why the sport model of the Accord is only available with the 4-cylinder engine, because nose heavy and sport don't really go together. I would personally cross that V6 off your list. It's a decent amount more fuel hungry, and although it is faster, the drivetrain isn't quite as refined as this CVT is. And I know that sounds a little crazy calling a CVT refined, but this new Honda CVT is a completely different animal than you've ever driven before. And that's primarily because this CVT changes gear ratios very, very quickly. If you've driven a Nissan CVT, or anybody else's CVT for that matter, then you'll notice that the amount of time that it takes the transmission to adjust from its very high ratio to a low kickdown style ratio, so if you're going to try and pass someone, for instance, on the freeway, it's a decent amount of time. This particular CVT is the first one that I've ever driven where that transition happens in the same amount of time as a regular automatic would take. So if you're going as we are now, 35 miles an hour or so, and you floor the car, the time it takes for the transmission to downshift to the lowest possible ratio at that particular speed to give you the maximum acceleration is roughly the same that it would take an automatic transmission to jump from, say, gear 6 down to gear 2. In other words, much faster than those other CVTs from the competitors. And likewise, when you're accelerating and then you've decided that you don't want to accelerate anymore, so you take your foot off the gas, this transmission upshifts just about as fast as those regular automatics do. It makes that driving feel substantially similar to a very good 6-speed automatic. And of course, you still get all the benefits of the CVT, including a very high top-end ratio to give you excellent highway fuel economy. This car gets about 36 miles per gallon very easily on the highway. And that's thanks to spinning about 1,800 RPM or so when you're going 60 miles an hour. And that's pretty good in any vehicle. We're out here on one of my favorite winding mountain roads in the Accord because the Accord does handle this sort of road very well. Thanks to that new McPherson strut suspension, it handles curves just a little bit better than the old Accord. Feel does suffer a tiny bit thanks to the McPherson strut design, but of course most vehicles in this segment don't have a whole lot of feel thanks to electric power steering, so that's really not that big of a problem in the Accord. The feel is very precise, however, which is something that I definitely appreciate. This doesn't feel as sloppy as the Toyota Camry or as the Nissan Altima, if I'm honest. We're going to put the transmission in low mode now so we can have a bit more fun on these winding mountain roads. Now, if you get the Sport model, you do get those paddle shifters on the steering wheel, as I said, but they're pretty useless. Honestly, I don't understand the point of paddles on a CVT-equipped car because CVTs are just more efficient than a stepped automatic transmission, so your performance is actually a little bit worse if you use those different ratios on that transmission. So they're just about as useful as training wheels on a dog or something. I just don't understand the point. It's really not necessary either because this transmission is very responsive. If you can hear that in this video, when you're going around corners and you floor it, the response of this transmission is nearly instant. It's very much like a traditional automatic, and it's very different from those other CVTs that are out there on the market, because you can see we go from about 2,000 RPM in our Sport mode to 4,000 RPM in about the time that it would take a regular automatic to shift about 2 gears or so, which is essentially similar to what you'd find in the competition in terms of their Sport modes and their transmissions. In typical Honda fashion, there are no standalone options on a 2013 Honda Accord. Instead, things are just bundled into different trim levels. So things start out with the $21,680 LX model, which includes standard dual-zone climate control, Pandora, Bluetooth streaming, etc., manual seats, cloth seats, of course. And then they top out with the V6 Touring model at $33,430. Now, most of the models you'll find in the dealer lots are like this EX model that we have here for $24,605, or the EXL model, which adds leather, for $27,995. The EXL model is also the first model you can get with the V6 engine, although that'll cost you nearly $30,000. Now, the EX model is very nicely configured. It has that lane watch system, the keyless go, the moonroof, etc. The EXL again adds leather, 10-way power seats, the LED brake lights, touchscreen audio, lane departure warning, heated seats, things like that as well. The EXL seems to be the most popular model on dealer lots right here around California, but in your area that may vary. So what's my final take on the 2013 Honda Accord? Well, it didn't exactly set my heart on fire, but none of these other mid-size sedans really do either. Now, when you compare it to some of the competition, this car gets excellent fuel economy and excellent performance from that direct injection engine and the CVT. We're talking a full second faster than the Ford Fusion with the 1.6-liter EcoBoost engine or the 2.5-liter base engine. The only Fusion that's faster is that more expensive 2-liter model. It's faster than the 4-cylinder models from Toyota and from Nissan as well. And the fuel economy on this is better than any of the real-world fuel economy numbers for 4-cylinder competitors. So that's a definite score in the book for the Honda Accord. The Accord has to lose a few points for its exterior styling, and not because it's bad, but because I think it is a little bit sedate, a little bit restrained. They could have injected a little bit more excitement if they'd wanted to in this model. On the flip side, however, I think that this will age better than some of the competitors, and I really don't know exactly how that Ford Fusion is going to age, although it does look pretty good at the moment. When all of my numbers were added up, the Accord clung on to second place for me in this particular segment, just below, interestingly enough, the Nissan Altima V6. And that's because the V6 has definitely more power than this particular model, but relatively similar fuel economy in our tests. We averaged about 31 miles per gallon in the new Nissan V6 Altima. This particular model got 32 to 33 miles per gallon on average very easily in our tests, and it's definitely a number 2 in this segment. I would check this car out before I checked out the Fusion or the Toyota Camry, unless you really needed more rear seat room, in which case the Camry is probably the vehicle for you in this segment.